Hello, my name is Sabrina Schembri, and today I'm going to be discussing movement joints in buildings. I will be covering the purpose of movement joints as well as different types of movement joints and what their specific purposes actually are. So, buildings are constantly moving, and this can be the result of several different things. This can be a result of temperature changes and moisture that may occur seasonally. When materials get cooler, they tend to shrink, and when they get warmer, they expand. So this applies to every material, including those that make up the structural aspects of a building. Materials may expand more in the summer when it's hotter and there's more moisture present, and they may shrink in the winter when it's colder out. Materials may also be affected by things like the heat of the sun and temperature changes overnight. It all depends on the area and the environment and the different things that will affect the materials that are in use. Another cause of the movement of buildings are the loads present. For example, live loads like snow loads and rain loads can cause temporary changes to your building. Also, the curing process of some materials can also cause movement, such as the shrinkage of concrete and the expansion of gypsum plaster. Elements like post-tension slabs and beams may also shrink over time as they take up the compression by the steel tendons. So these types of motion occur on a pretty small scale, but if they're ignored, can lead to severe damage in the building and weakening of the materials. In order to take this into account and help mitigate the damage from these motions, movement joints can be installed. The purpose of these movement joints is to allow for this type of motion to happen without doing any damage. Buildings without movement joints installed will actually make their own joints by cracking at points of maximum stress, which can be quite dangerous depending on the situation. So there are subcategories of joints within this broad category of movement joints. I'd also like to point out that there are non-movement joints as well that have their own subcategories. But under movement joints, there are surface divider joints, abutment joints, control joints, and expansion joints. And there are also building separation joints, and those include volume change joints, settlement joints, and seismic separation joints. So now, I'm going to discuss the different types of movement joints in a little more depth. There are working construction joints, and these are implemented in the regular process of assembling a building. An example of where working construction joints can be seen is in a shingled roof. The overlapping pattern is used so that the roof structure can handle the effects of temperature change and moisture. Another example of movement joints are enclosure joints, which are used to separate structural and non-structural elements of a building. Next, I'm going to discuss the types of surface divider joints. So these types of joints are used to deal with the movement around floors, roofing, and walls. Abutment or isolation joints are joints that separate old construction from new construction. This is what you would want to use if you are altering an old building. If you are adding new masonry to an old brick wall to extend it horizontally, you should use a vertical isolation joint between the old work and your new brick instead of trying to connect the new masonry directly to the old wall. Control joints are lines of weakness that are purposely implemented along where cracking normally would occur on the surface where the material shrinks, and this helps to relieve stresses that could lead to random cracking. An example of this that we see every day is the grooves across concrete sidewalks. This helps create an orderly pattern of lines rather than random jagged cracking in the sidewalks. Control joints may also be used in concrete floor slabs. So, expansion joints are open seams that do something a little different. They allow extra room for expansion of the material to occur. They can be used in brick walls to allow the bricks to expand from when there is an increase in moisture. So bricks are porous and water can start to build up. So you can use these expansion joints to help create extra room for the expansion of that material itself. Control joints and expansion joints are both usually placed at corners, openings, and changes in height or width of your building. So now I'm going to discuss the types of building separation joints. These types of joints are used to divide larger or more complex buildings into smaller parts so that they can move more independently. So there are volume change joints, and these are used to relieve tension due to temperature and moisture changes. These are usually placed in the massing of a building where cracking may occur. There are also settlement joints, and these are implemented to prevent stress caused by different rates of foundation settlement between different parts of a building or between different parts of buildings that may have different types of foundations. You can also have seismic separation joints, which are used to divide a building into smaller units that can move separately when seismic activity occurs. This is a pretty safe thing to add to your building, just, in case there's an earthquake and not every part of the building will be affected if you implement seismic separation joints. It's good to use that type of separation. When using movement joints, you shouldn't use materials that restrict movement around them. For example, rebar shouldn't extend through a movement joint, and the joints should be able to stop the passage of sound, heat, water, air, and light as well. In summary, the purpose of movement joints is to allow for the inevitable motion in buildings without causing any damage. There are several types of movement joints with different purposes, such as allowing room for material expansion and helping to mitigate the effects of shrinkage. This includes isolation joints, expansion joints, control joints, volume change joints, settlement joints, and seismic separation joints. That's all I have for you today, and thanks for watching.